SpongeGex here with my thoughts on the brand new SpongeBob video game, SpongeBob Squarepants Titans of the Tide. This serves as the third entry to the Purple Lanturn SpongeBob games, following Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated and the Cosmic Shake. The game is available for PS5, Xbox Series, Steam, and Switch 2. Honestly, I have no idea why this isn't available for PS4 or Xbox One, since it doesn't seem to utilize any current-gen specs. I can see why it's on Switch 2 compared to Switch 1, but sadly the Switch 2 is still a pretty lousy port. I unfortunately got the Switch 2 version because I had $200 worth of eShop currency, so I would have gotten the Series X version, but I figured it would have been cheaper to just use the currency I had and just buy the Switch 2 version. It looks fine on the Switch 2. It definitely looks a lot better than how low-textured Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated looked on Switch 1. But it suffers from horrible frame rate drops during certain parts of the game. Like when I had to fight a jellyfish mini-boss in Neptune's Catacombs, and especially during the slide segments in the final level, it lagged really bad. I may not be a fan of modern SpongeBob, but the platformers by Purple Lanturn were pretty good, and they still capture the charm of classic SpongeBob. So after trying the demo on Switch 2, I enjoyed it and decided to pre-order the game digitally. While the game was okay, I do consider this the weakest of the Purple Lanturn trilogy. There are far worse SpongeBob games out there, but this did feel too short, repetitive, and overwhelming compared to the past two games. This borrows way too much gameplay from Cosmic Shake. SpongeBob has the exact same moveset as before. He still attacks with karate chops, he hovers with a pizza box, and he can do a Sonic-like homing attack by kicking off of balloons. He eventually gains a bubble wand ability that allows him to create homing bubbles to activate switches and trap enemies. This time, Patrick is playable again. He also has a hover ability, but instead he uses like a little parasail that kind of pays homage to that scene in the SpongeBob movie when he's flying over the crowd naked, but he's wearing his clothes this time, depending on what costume you have him wearing, that is. While Patrick was arguably the worst character to play as in Battle for Bikini Bottom, he's surprisingly a lot more fun to play this time. There were even times where I wanted to play as him more than SpongeBob. He's less heavy when it comes to platforming. The mechanics of him lifting and throwing objects feels a lot less restrictive this time. For many of the items he carries no longer break over time, and he can now jump while carrying objects, thank goodness. Patrick can burrow underground like Bugs Bunny to tunnel under fences, save people who are stuck underground, collect buried coins, and fire himself out of geysers. He eventually gains a grappling hook, which allows him to grab objects and enemies from a distance, along with pulling down special targets to create platforms. Sadly, Sandy is once again not playable, but here's hoping that we someday get another sequel and maybe it can make her playable with a much improved moveset as well. Now, before I get started on the story, I just want to say how this game has a brilliant loading screen. It's one of the time cards we've seen used across the show, where the French narrator would say, later. So yeah, that was a really nice touch. One of the best loading screens I've ever seen in a video game. So the story starts off pretty funny. We control SpongeBob as he gets ready to help open up the Krusty Krab for a special day where Krabby Patties are half off. Wait, what? Who are you and what have you done with the real Mr. Krabs? So the Flying Dutchman shows up demanding food, but he ends up having to wait in a ridiculously long line.
The Flying Dutchman waiting in a line of simple mortals? Unimaginable! Unthinkable!
Several thinkable hours later.
Right when the Dutchman is next in line, King Neptune shows up as Mr. Krabs escorts him to the front of the line. This enrages the Dutchman as he picks a fight with Neptune. The two start clashing, causing their powers to fire all over the place, destroying Bikini Bottom and turning many of the citizens into ghosts. SpongeBob gets struck and turns into a ghost as well. We then take control of Patrick as he decides to head down to the Krusty Krab for food. He makes some humorous commentary on how his path to the Krusty Krab looks a bit different compared to usual.
Gee, was the Krusty Krab always floating in midair like that?
So Patrick encounters his first mini-boss fight, and for some reason, every time this game introduces a new enemy, they force us to fight a tougher version of the enemies that have more HP. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the combat in this game. It was fun in Battle for Bikini Bottom and Cosmic Shake, but there are just too many combat sections scattered throughout this game, with too many enemies at once, and they take forever to beat. Fighting with Patrick can be real frustrating at times. There were many times where I tried using Patrick's grappling ability to pull in objects from a distance and throw them at my enemies, but the auto-aiming is really bad. It would instead cause Patrick to be flung towards big enemies and get hurt. It's like I wasn't aiming for the enemies, I was aiming for an object so I could throw it at the enemies, but Patrick grabs onto the enemy and gets flung towards them, and oh, it's really annoying. It ruins so many battle strategies I had. Suddenly, Mr. Krabs shows up in a flying fortress called the Floating Patty as he has Patrick hop aboard. The Floating Patty is basically like Starship Mario from Super Mario Galaxy 2, just a small hub world where more characters and objects board the ship the further we progress. It's our hub to getting to the different levels, so you don't have like an actual hub world where you move around to get to the levels, you just have a simple level select screen. So, Patrick reunites with SpongeBob as they tap their best friends forever rings together, causing a strange occurrence where SpongeBob is no longer a ghost, but Patrick is now a ghost. So the two use their rings to take turns being ghosts. Basically a clever and humorous way to introduce the game's character swap mechanic. And so whoever you're playing as, the other character will be a ghost, and they'll basically serve as our Navi for this game, where they'll give us hints and all of that. And so, yeah, it's a nice nod to the previous game, because in that game, Cosmic Shake, Patrick was turned into a balloon, and so he was our floating, talking companion throughout the game. And so, in this game, it can be SpongeBob or Patrick, depending on who we're playing as. And you know, I do like it when games do that, when they cleverly introduce a game mechanic and they have it fit into the show's world. So before we take off to the first level, Mr. Krabs forces us to destroy 4 objects with Patrick's throwing ability, and then we need to buy a uniform from Pearl, who is the game's shopkeeper. Honestly, the setup for this feels so poorly written. There's just no good excuse for why SpongeBob should have to buy a costume that does nothing but cause a radio antenna to stick out of his head. I mean, obviously it's because they need some way to communicate with SpongeBob throughout the game so they can give him hints on where to go next and all that. But surely there were better ways they could have introduced this. Like, they forced you to put on this outfit. Like, you cannot progress to the next level until you buy this outfit and actually equip it. And that's annoying, because maybe you have a costume you already unlocked ahead of time. Like, I unlocked SpongeBob's Fry Cook uniform, so I wanted to wear that. But no, I couldn't wear that, because I was forced to wear the stupid antenna. So throughout the game, we can collect coins and exchange them for costumes for SpongeBob and Patrick, along with decorations for the hub world, along with health upgrades. The costumes feel like a downgrade compared to the huge selection we had in Cosmic Shake. In Cosmic Shake, most of the outfits could just be unlocked just by buying them. There were a few that you had to unlock through certain hidden achievements and missions, but most of them, yeah, it's like you just had to have enough money to get them. You basically unlocked more costumes to buy the further you got in the game, but here you have to find the costumes hidden beneath treasure chests, challenges, or in hidden requirements, and then you have to buy them. So it's more of a chore to get costumes in this game, making 100% completion a real exhausting chore. For some reason, those who pre-ordered this game get 2 DLC exclusive costumes, one where you can play as SpongeBob with his butt exposed, like that one scene from the SpongeBob movie, where the back of his pants fell down, and then we also have a fully nude Patrick. What is this doing in a family game? Pearl's shop is overall pretty pointless. I mean, I guess it's good for those who like Pearl as a character and want to see a spot in the game where you can interact with her character, fine enough, but you don't need to go to Pearl to buy things. You can just do this in the pause menu. Just go to the pause menu, go to the shop icon, and that way you don't have to travel all the way back to the hub world to buy new items every time. I usually do like it when games do this. Like, it's nice to have a physical way to visit certain shops, but I do like it when, instead of having to constantly go back and backtrack to a certain spot to buy the same items over and over, it's easier to just pause it and get it over with. So throughout the game, I stuck with SpongeBob in his lifeguard outfit from the Sponge Guard on Duty episode. Seeing SpongeBob constantly wearing shades and a tight swimsuit just made his interactions throughout the game funnier and sometimes even cool. There's just something so funny with him having like these cold expressions with the shades on. It just made the game a lot funnier for me. Though there was a bad glitch during the final cutscene where his eyes were clipping through the glasses. My favorite Patrick outfit had to have been the SpongeBob outfit from the episode Big Pink Loser. The plot of this game is honestly a complicated mess. It had a great setup where you assume the Dutchman and Neptune's clash end up altering reality, as SpongeBob has to adventure through a distorted Bikini Bottom to try to stop the fight between the two titans and get them to fix everything. Simple enough, but the plot feels so unfocused. The presentation is very rushed and unpolished. Many cutscenes are lacking music or sound effects, making everything feel amateurish and very empty. The first level has us adventuring to some beach and jungle themed level because Mr. Krabs wants us to find treasure or something. What does this have to do with saving Bikini Bottom? The level itself is pretty generic. It feels like a mixture of Goo Lagoon and the Kelp Forest, levels we've already seen recycled in many SpongeBob games. So we have to activate a lighthouse to prove that we're worthy enough of entering a forest for some reason, and then Sandy gives us a ghost surfboard to allow us to travel across the water and reach a lighthouse. At first it sounded like a cool new ability and a faster way to travel, but the steering and platforming while surfing is horrible. I even encountered a bad glitch after beating the chapter's boss fight, so I got on and off of the surfboard, but my character suddenly couldn't jump, attack, or use any other ability. Somehow they gained the ability to walk on water, and they're not supposed to do that. So if this happens, you can basically just exit the level, and then the characters will return back to normal. But yeah, sadly, the surfboard is not a permanent ability. It's only usable in certain sections of certain levels. If I recall, it was only available in the beach level and the frozen jellyfish fields level. So yeah, it would have been nice to just be able to use that anywhere, but nope, it's a restricted item, sadly. The first boss in the game is a giant Flying Dutchman Jack-in-the-Box treasure chest, and it traps Mr. Krabs. So you gotta wait for it to like pop open, dodge its attacks, and then start whacking it. So yeah, pretty simple boss fight. The second chapter has us trying to infiltrate into Neptune's palace, so we can try warning him about the Flying Dutchman's next attack. Just a number of excuses to being locked out of rooms and having to crawl through many empty rooms and hallways, needing to fight off enemies and solving puzzles to get from point A to point B, and while I loved the character swapping mechanic at first, it got real old and tiring during Chapter 2. They expect us to swap way too frequently, even between a series of jumps. For instance, 1 minute you have to play as Patrick and use his burrow ability to launch into the air, only to come across an item that requires quickly swapping to SpongeBob. We gotta hit that item with a bubble to make a platform appear, followed by quickly turning into Patrick to use his grappling hook to create another platform, followed by needing to quickly swap to SpongeBob to use his homing karate kick to jump off a series of balloons. This game is filled with ridiculous platforming juggling acts like this, and they get even more complex the further the game goes on. After a lot of tiring platforming, puzzle solving, and combat segments, we finally get to King Neptune. Wait a minute, they retconned Neptune's son Triton, but they kept his wife, who was introduced in the same episode that introduced Triton. Now, Mindy from the SpongeBob movie is his daughter, despite how she was the daughter of a completely different Neptune in the SpongeBob movie. See, this is why I hate it when modern SpongeBob tries making callbacks to past episodes, because they just never add up. SpongeBob never had continuity to begin with, but they never put any thought into it, and it just makes everything so complicated. It's like either SpongeBob should have been a show that had continuity to begin with, or they should have just stuck with the fact that SpongeBob is a show with no continuity, and their desperate attempts at callbacks just kind of ruins the show nowadays. Admittedly, they're less irritating in the video game. Like, I think the callbacks are obnoxious in the TV show, but in the video game, they feel more sparingly used. They feel more fun to see in the video game, even though not all of them make sense. So the Dutchman shows up, and King Neptune uses his family as human shields, and the Dutchman kills them? No joke, this is the last we see of Mindy and the Queen for the rest of the game. They just turn to ghosts and they disappear. Of course, the ending implies that Neptune and the Dutchman will use their powers to restore the town and the citizens. But still, that was a real dick move of Neptune to let his family die like that. He tried acting like he was offended that they were killed, but still, he hid right behind them. He used them as human shields. Yeah, that was a really messed up part of the game. So, SpongeBob and Patrick get trapped inside of Neptune's catacombs. Here they find a prison that contains the villain from the last game, Madame Cassandra. She begs SpongeBob and Patrick to free her from her cage in exchange for some help. The crazy chocolate-obsessed fish from the classic episode Chocolate with Nuts is also here. We break him out and we can participate in a side quest that involves stealing a piece of Neptune's chocolate and giving it to him.
Chocolate! Chocolate!
So after freeing Cassandra, she betrays us and leaves us stuck fighting with a possessed statue of Neptune. The third chapter is the craziest chapter in the game. I'm just disappointed that the trailers gave it all away, because this should have been something they kept as a surprise. So SpongeBob and Patrick meet up with Sandy with a plan to meet up at the Fry Cook Museum to stop the Dutchman and Neptune. only for the Dutchmen to attack their ship, causing SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy to fall overboard and land in a now frozen jellyfish fields. Sandy builds a camp and asks for the boys to go out and find some jellyfish jelly for food supplies before they all starve to death. So while the boys were gone, they come back to find that Sandy is missing, and they see monstrous footprints, and they hear loud growls and roars echoing in the distance. Patrick begins acting like a jerk out of nowhere, not caring about rescuing Sandy. This causes SpongeBob to get into a fight with Patrick. The two go separate ways, and we're forced to play as SpongeBob alone through a bunch of rolling boulder sections, until he finally meets up with Patrick. The two apologize and move forward. So we reach the end of the level. It feels like it's building up to a boss fight with King Jellyfish, but we find Sandy in her hibernation form from the Season 2 episode Survival of the Idiots. Admittedly, this was a crazy good idea for a boss fight, as we have to dodge her vicious claw attacks and earthquake-inducing body slams. She occasionally climbs up icicles and throws ice chunks at us. Here we need to quickly swap to Patrick, grapple the ice she throws at us, throw it back at her, and knock her off. So whenever she's left open, we just gotta rush over and keep smacking her until she snaps back into her senses, basically. And so eventually she gets knocked out as Mr. Krabs arrives with the floating patty. SpongeBob and Patrick somehow manage to haul Sandy back onto the ship, and she reverts back to normal once she warms up. And then the heroes continue on with their quest. Again, this boss fight would have been more exciting if the trailers didn't give it away. The boss fight was honestly the highlight of the game for me. It was one of the most fun boss fights in the game. As a kid, I imagined how insane it would have been to have a level based on the episode Survival of the Idiots, where we have like a giant killer Sandy on the loose and we have to play as SpongeBob and Patrick trying desperately to run away from her, and it just sounded like it could have been made for a fun, crazy challenge. So not only did we finally get something like that, but they turned it into an intense boss fight that requires a lot of dodging and waiting for the right moments to attack. The boss fight wasn't very hard, but it was still pretty intense and pretty overdramatic for what's a SpongeBob video game. This honestly gave me Kingdom Hearts boss fight vibes, especially when Sandy's eyes started glowing red. Now, I can see young kids having a real hard time with this game. I could see this boss fight kicking their butts. And I myself had to retry a few platforming and race challenges in this game. So while Hibernation Sandy was a fun boss fight, I thought the setup for it could have been a lot better. We've seen a number of episodes where Sandy is in cold temperatures, and she doesn't end up turning into a bear-like monster. That was only done for Survival of the Idiots, and it was implied in that episode that she got so big because she ate too many acorns before winter. Yet in this game, she was starving, so it makes no sense how she could end up so big. Also, how was Sandy breathing without an air helmet in this form? It would have made more sense for the Dutchman or Neptune to try stopping us from going further. They appear towards the end of the level, and then they cast a spell or curse on Sandy that turns her into a monster, causing SpongeBob and Patrick to have to knock her out until the spell wears off. A spell could have also explained why she was able to breathe underwater without a helmet. I mean, it was a cool idea, just not well thought out. It just came out of nowhere, and I felt like there were more fun and exciting ways they could have introduced this boss fight into the game. So, despite the flaws, though, it was still a fun boss fight, a fun way to end the level. Not to mention, seeing a frozen jellyfish fields was a nice way to bring back this iconic setting and bring it back in a way we've never seen it before. So, the final level was very underwhelming. We tried adventuring to the Fry Cook Museum from the episode Neptune Spatula, for that's where the Dutchman and Neptune are fighting. So we tried getting there so we could stop the fight, but we keep getting sent through the Fly of Despair, which leads us to different sliding segments and warps us to different areas, and it's just a whole grimy mess. The sliding segments in this game are even worse than the ones from Battle for Bikini Bottom, not to mention they have even worse frame rates. So it's also worth mentioning that each level has a sliding segment, and then there's also these annoying side challenges where Larry the Lobster wants us to beat the slides under a time limit. They require retrying over and over until you find the hidden shortcuts to get through the level faster, and for me, repetition challenges are just never fun. I don't like levels where the only way to beat it is to keep playing over and over until you get good. I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of time limit challenges. Never was, never will be. They're just tiring and frustrating to me. So, eventually, SpongeBob and Patrick find and wield the Golden Spatula, and this allows them to one-hit KO enemies. Now, it was a fun ability to gain, but it's only usable in this level. So we reach the two Titans as they start attacking us for no reason, and I felt very confused by this part, for they flat out start working together out of nowhere to try taking us down. It leaves you wondering, wait a minute, they want to kill each other, so why are they suddenly working together to try killing two puny mortals? So, after a challenging fight that involves ducking and jumping over attacks, and then slapping the Titan's hands with the golden spatula, SpongeBob's spatula proves to be the only thing that can strike fear into the two Titans as they cower before the spatula's might, and SpongeBob orders them to stop fighting and fix Bikini Bottom and restore the residents, and we get an abrupt ending, and that's it. So, this was sadly a very short game. It took me 18 hours to beat. Seriously, only 4 levels to explore. Granted, the worlds were pretty big and divided into many split sections and paths, but the game felt very linear. Navigating this world was confusing at times, even with a hint system where we could tap the left D-pad to have SpongeBob or Patrick show us which way to head. It acted up a lot of times, causing the characters to stand around or even head the wrong way. I missed the more open exploration from Battle for Bikini Bottom. Even Cosmic Shake's levels were better than this, and they were more linear. Battle for Bikini Bottom just had more fun worlds to explore. We had like SpongeBob's house, his friends' houses, the Krusty Krab, Downtown Bikini Bottom, Jellyfish Fields, Rock Bottom, Goo Lagoon, Sand Mountain, and more. Cosmic Shake literally shook it up by having the worlds get distorted with multiverses, as we saw reimagined locations and characters based on different episodes, including Pest of the West, Dunces and Dragons, SpongeBob BC, and more. The level selection in Titans of the Tide was just very underwhelming, not only with only 4 areas to choose from, but really, we got a bigger and emptier clone of Goo Lagoon mixed with the Kelp Forest. Neptune's Palace could have been a cool idea for a level, but it's just a huge maze of different dungeons and a giant throne room. Jellyfish Fields was the only level that stood out. Admittedly, it was a big, generic, and empty snow world, but it's so cool to know that behind all that snow is Jellyfish Fields. And then the final level just felt similar to the Dutchman's Graveyard from Battle for Bikini Bottom, but more split up and had way too many slide sections and puzzle-solving moments. Again, this is not the worst SpongeBob game out there. It's okay overall, but compared to Purple Lantern's previous SpongeBob games, this one does feel very half-baked and rushed. The gameplay felt very unpolished and unresponsive at times. Luckily, the game never crashed on me, unlike the Switch version of Yuka Replayly. That game crashed on me 18 times during my 100% completion playthrough. So while there are plenty of hidden items and side missions to complete, nothing in this game gives me any encouragement or excitement to try finding everything. It just feels like a thankless chore. To make matters worse, this isn't even a complete package. The game does have a low $40 price, but there's a $20 season pass for DLC that will come out periodically next year, including more costumes, more Plankton side mission challenges, and a brand new story level based on the upcoming 4th theatrical SpongeBob movie, Search for Squarepants. Again, it really shows how rushed this game was. I highly doubt that DLC will warrant its $20 price tag. I mean, look at it this way. For $40, we get 4 levels, 4 boss fights, and a number of costumes for SpongeBob and Patrick, all for $40. Fair enough. So then, for this DLC, which is asking $20 from us, we get only 1 new level, a few skins, and missions that use recycled in-game assets. This game is overall very cheap and stingy. I admittedly did buy the Season Pass bundle, so I might make a video about the new level when it releases down the line, but I doubt its inclusion will change my overall thoughts on this game. So overall, I give Titans of the Tide a 6 out of 10. It had some nice ideas, but it had an unfocused story with wasted potential, half-baked cutscenes with a lot of missing audio, repetitive combat, repetitive and tiring platforming. The boss fights were admittedly okay, especially the Sandy boss fight, which was arguably the highlight of this game. But the controls during a lot of sections felt very unresponsive, especially during the surfing and sliding segments. Anyways, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Have a great day.